She conspired with numerous other individuals in and outside of Alaska, including juveniles, forever altering everybody's life.
A centuries-long prison sentence is what's ahead for convicted killer Denali Brehmer, who, when she was just a teen, orchestrated a murder-for-hire plot all at the behest of an online catfisher. Her crimes ranging from federal child pornography charges to the murder of a mentally challenged teen who considered Brehmer to be her best friend. Instead, it was Brehmer who acted as the ringleader in the girl's takedown.
This is degenerate human behavior on all sides. This is just disgusting when you see this, but I think she was already on the road to doing this, and then she just basically somebody gave her an excuse.
She may not have pulled the trigger, but this never would have happened if it weren't for Denali Brehmer.
The story gained national coverage back in 2019 when the body of 19-year-old Cynthia Hoffman was found along the banks of the Eklutna River just outside of Anchorage, Alaska. She'd been shot in the back of the head and was bound with duct tape. Retired FBI agent Colin Schmidt says a crime like this is almost unheard of in Alaska.
There's just not a lot of violent crime in Alaska.
Before Hoffman's body was recovered, her father contacted the authorities, saying it was unlike his daughter to stay out of contact for so long. He says he even received a message from his daughter's friend, then 18-year-old Brehmer, who said she was worried about Hoffman. But investigators quickly determined it was Brehmer behind the gruesome murder, and the details turned out to be nearly as shocking as the crime itself. It all started when Brehmer began chatting online with a guy named Tyler who lived in Kansas. As it turned out, Tyler was actually Darren Schillmiller, who lived in Indiana. But before she learned all that, Brehmer believed Tyler was a millionaire. I mean, that alone to me is a pretty heavy-hitting swing, saying that he's a millionaire. Why would she believe that?
Well, I think there's some mental health issues here with the person that was catfished. Obviously, she's online for a reason. She's trying to find friends or trying to find some human interaction. And she was basically looking for somebody to pay attention to her. And then obviously this thing went off the rails and ended up with a victim.
The man Brehmer believed was Tyler, then offered her a whopping $9 million to commit murder. I'm wondering what would cause her to take the bait at all for this murder for hire plot. The promise of $9 million, was that enough, or could she have wanted to murder and have these murderous tendencies ahead of time?
I think it's the latter. I think it was a matter. This is just somebody that pushed her over the edge. This is degenerate human behavior on all sides. This is just disgusting when you see this, but I think she was already on the road to doing this, and then she just basically somebody gave her an excuse. But that's obviously not an excuse for the person who catfished her, who's just a degenerate, and he needs obviously to feel the same consequences that she does.
In Schillmiller's instructions to Brehmer, he didn't give a murder target, but she quickly gravitated toward Hoffman. I'm wondering why she would have gravitated towards Cynthia Hoffman, who claimed to be her best friend.
Well, most likely they had some sort of falling out, or there was some sort of catalyst that gave the perpetrator a reason to go ahead and target this poor person and victimize her. And so what may have happened here is the catfishing. She was already had an ideation of harming her so-called best friend, and this basically pushed her over the edge.
Hoffman was developmentally disabled, and her father told reporters she had the intellect of someone in 7th grade. Schmidt says that's probably another reason Brehmer went after her.
That made her a prime target because she was probably she was susceptible to being manipulated to go into the woods or go wherever this occurred. And then that's when her so-called friend killed her. So the lack of sophistication is basically what kind of likely led her to be the perfect victim.
Brehmer recruited an entire squad of people to assist in Hoffman's murder, saying she'd give them a cut of the money. Why would other teenagers willingly participate in something so heinous?
Well, I think the desensitization, desensitivity of violence when these kids are seeing violent acts played out over and over and over again via social media or even on TV. I think that it's the video game generation that they think this is just a video game, and they don't understand these are people and there's real consequences to their behavior.
The defendants include then 16-year-old Caden McIntosh, Caleb Leland, and two others whose names haven't been released because they were under 18 at the time of the crime and were not charged as adults.
Well, I think it was based upon their level of culpability. Did they just know this was going to happen and not report it, versus they actually were in the car and helped move the body, or did they participate in getting the victim to go to a place where the perpetrator could kill her? So I think that's where it comes down to, is what was their level of culpability based upon whether they're going to be named as an adult perpetrator or kept as a juvenile and still face a consequence.
Both McIntosh and Leland were eventually charged as adults and are awaiting their trial and sentencing respectively. But before all that, on June 2nd, 2019, Brehmer and McIntosh lured Hoffman into the woods north of Anchorage under the guise of a hike. Schmidt says the entire murder-for-hire plot screams a lack of impulse control from the teenage killers.
I mean, these are kids who don't have any impulse controls, never developed that. And frankly, if they hadn't done this, there was a high probability they would have done some other violent act, because it's certainly, they're not thinking through their actions. And they didn't even think about the second and third, state of this, of getting caught. They just were acted in the moment.
During this same time frame, federal prosecutors say Schillmiller requested Brehmer sexually assault a child and sent him photos and videos of it. He's since pleaded guilty to those charges, and so has Brehmer. Schmidt believes all of Schillmiller's actions were made in an effort to gain control over Brehmer. What would make him want to do something like this? I mean, he's very far away from the crime scene, about 4,000 miles. Why would he want to get involved at all?
What I've seen over my time in the FBI, as well as regular law enforcement, is basically it's a matter of power. These catfishers want to have this power over their victims, and be able to basically be the puppet master and pull strings. And it appears that this guy not just didn't do it one time or didn't have one interaction; that it was a long string of interactions that ended up with a fatality.
And the online relationship that first brought together Schillmiller and Brehmer was likely what caused their downfall.
We're not dealing with a state actor or a Mexican drug cartel. These people are not very sophisticated, and I'm sure they left all kinds of breadcrumbs of their behavior all over the internet, on their computers, and then their cell phone data, the tracking data. I'm sure law enforcement was able to put together a timeline down to the seconds based upon this person's overt behavior, complete disregard for other people's safety, and wanting to add basically murderous intent. And so I don't think this person made any effort to hide their actions whatsoever.
Brehmer pleaded guilty in February 2023 to charges of solicitation of murder, tampering with evidence, and murder in the second degree. At a 3-day sentencing hearing this month, Anchorage Assistant District Attorney Patrick McKay Jr. asked for the highest possible sentence.
The court should find that Miss Brehmer engaged in one of the most serious crimes that we have in Alaska. She executed Cynthia Hoffman in a murder-for-hire plot. She conspired with numerous other individuals in and outside of Alaska, including juveniles, forever altering everybody's life. She may not have pulled the trigger, but this never would have happened if it weren't for Denali Brehmer.
The case's judge called Hoffman's murder tragic and senseless.
It's a conspiracy to commit murder, so everybody has the same level of culpability, depending on what their behavior was. If they furthered this act, then they're to be held accountable.
Schmidt says the case also brings up the threat of cybersecurity and victimization of young victims.
And I actually had this conversation with my boys who are 11 and 13, is don't talk to strangers. And even online, don't talk to strangers. And even if you think you know who that person is, don't talk to them. And so that's the first step. The second step is obviously to be aware of what your kids are doing and who they're talking to. And if you need to take the chat settings off, like I've done several times with my kids, or ban them from actually being on these platforms. Discord is one. Fortnite has a chat function. They're all having these chat functions in which there's a lot of really, really bad people on there, and their intent is to get people to do bad things or to harm.
For his part in the crime, Schillmiller was sentenced to 99 years in prison. We reached out to the Alaskan prosecutors involved in this case, but we're told they won't comment until all of the defendants' cases have wrapped. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Sierra Gillespie.